promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar, Banjulome and Ouagadougou, 7 p.m. in Porto Novo, Abuja and Niamey. Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WATR.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Malian forces strike back after deadly jihadist attacks. In Senegal, political commentator Badara Gaja got detained after alleged insults against Prime Minister Sonko. Flags fly half-mast in Nigeria as the country mourns former President Muhammad Buhari.
He tried his best. It's a loss to the nation because at a time like this, we need the totality of the experience and what I may call statesmanship of all those who have had the opportunity to run the affairs of this country.
And polls close after military's early vote and tense campaign in Togo.
Anything that helps weaken the system in place, we support. So you want me to criticize that? Never. Anything that contributes to weakening it and exposing to the international community who they really are, I support it.
Well, details of these stories and more coming up shortly.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and welcome to our listeners within and beyond the sub-region. We begin in Mali because in the wake of a coordinated assault on July 1 that reportedly resulted in the deaths of 10 soldiers, the Malian military launched a counter-offensive targeting militant strongholds in the Kai and Nara regions, according to a statement released by the General Staff of the Armed Forces EMGA on Monday. The attacks, which were claimed by the Al-Qaeda-linked group for the support of Islam and Muslims, JNIM, occurred simultaneously across 7 locations: Nyono Molodo, Sandre, Kaye, Diboli, Nyoro, and Dusahel, and more. Well, for more in this report, here is Christopher Atijo.
JNIM announced it had inflicted casualties on the Malian Armed Forces, FAMA, seized military outposts, and taken control of several positions, especially in Diboli, Sandari, and Kays. In retaliation, Malian armed forces carried out extensive military operations, reportedly causing significant losses to the attackers. Colonel Major Suleimana Dembele, spokesperson for the Armed Forces Information and Public Relations Directorate, DIPA, stated in a televised address that over 80 militants were killed on the same day. The military also captured weapons, vehicles, motorcycles, and ammunitions while maintaining coordination with allied forces. The campaign continued with further air and ground strikes on July 12 and 13, targeting key logistics centers and a training facility located in the Gaugao forest, approximately 25 kilometers north of Aru in the Kays regions. Additionally, enemy hideouts were eliminated in the Bamadougou area, southeast of Madina Kagoro in the Nara region. These operations reportedly led to the death of 3 militants and the seizure of surveillance devices. Despite the skill and coordination of the July 1 attacks, described as an unprecedented show of force by JNIM, even near the Senegalese border, the Malian army emphasized its ongoing efforts to dismantle terrorist infrastructure across the country.
Christopher Atichu filed that report. Now, let's head to Nigeria because the country is mourning its immediate past president, Muhammadu Buhari, who died in London at the age of 82. President Bola Tinubu has expressed deep sorrow and directed Vice President Kasimi Shettima to lead a government delegation to bring the former leader's remains back to Nigeria. As tributes continue to pour in, supporters and admirers are reflecting on Buhari's legacy. WDR's Abuja correspondent Osman Omar has more.
The news of former President Muhammadu Buhari's death has thrown Nigeria into a moment of reflection and mourning. Known for his austere lifestyle and reputation as an anti-corruption crusader, Buhari leaves behind a controversial but impactful political legacy that spanned military and civilian leadership. From his early days as a military head of state between 1984 and 1985 to his eventual emergence as a democratically elected president in 2015, Buhari's political journey was marked by resilience. He contested Nigeria's presidency presidency 3 times unsuccessfully before clinching victory on his 4th attempt, a landmark moment in the country's democratic evolution. Throughout his 2-term presidency, which ended in May 2023, Buhari promised to tackle insecurity, revive the economy, and fight corruption. 3 areas where opinions remain sharply divided on his performance. Abdullahi Haruna, author of the book The Buhari in Us, and a longtime admirer who named one of his sons after the former president, describes Buhari as a symbol of discipline and sacrifice.
Perhaps the most defining legacy of Muhammadu Buhari was his uncompromising stance against corruption, both as a military head of state and as a 2-time elected civilian president. He championed what I call transparency, physical discipline, and institutional efforts to combat graft, mostly notable through his support of agencies like the EFCC and the ICPC.
For many like Haruna, Buhari's appeal went beyond politics. He embodied a generational model of leadership rooted in restraint, patriotism, and personal frugality, attributes that resonate with citizens disillusioned by political excess. But his time in office also saw mounting criticisms over human rights concerns, growing insecurity in parts of the country, and an economy that struggled to recover from global and domestic shocks. As Nigerians prepare to receive his remains, national flags fly at half-mast and condolence messages continue to pour in from across the region and beyond. Former President Buhari may have taken a final bow, but the debate over his legacy is far from over. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Meanwhile, African leaders, the African Union and the Economic Community for West African States, ECOWAS, have paid glowing tribute to the late Muhammadu Buhari. The African Union Chair, Muhammadu Ali Yusuf, praised Buhari as a principled Pan-Africanist and steadfast advocate for regional integration, good governance and peace across the continent. In a statement late Sunday, President of the ECOWAS Commission, Dr. Omar Ali Toure, said Buhari's legacy in sustaining democracy and regional integration will be remembered. Sierra Leone's president and current chairperson of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State, Julius Madabio, also described Muhammadu Buhari as a man of honor whose contribution to Africa's stability will be cherished. Gambian President Adama Barrow hailed him as a champion of peace in the region, recalling his decisive role in resolving the Gambia's 2016 political crisis. Back home, the late statesman Muhammadu Buhari will be remembered for his pragmatic and solution-driven leadership style, both as a military head of state and as a civilian president. Here is former President Olusegun Obasanjo.
He tried his best. It's a loss to the nation because at a time like this, we need the totality of the experience and what I may call statesmanship of all those who have had the opportunity to run the affairs of this country in the past to get us out of the situation we are in. He will be sorely missed, and may his soul rest in perfect peace.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Here in Senegal, outspoken political commentator Badara Gajaga has been placed in pre-trial detention after 5 days in police custody for his opinions on popular TV for Giancarlo. Gajaga now faces serious charges including insulting Prime Minister, spreading false information and violating public decency. Francis Boniface reports.
Gajaga, known for his outspoken views on the political talk show Jakalobi on TFM, is facing multiple charges, including insulting the Prime Minister, spreading false news, and making indecent remarks in the public sphere. A strong critic of the current government led by the PASTEF party, Gajaga was brought before an investigating judge who ordered his detention. According to his legal team, he is also accused of receiving funds to conduct propaganda that could threaten public safety. One of his lawyers, former Minister Umayum, expressed deep concern over the arrest, saying he was shocked and deeply moved. The charges appear linked to comments Gajaga made about Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko, referencing Sonko's 2023 conviction in the high-profile Ajisar case. Sources also suggest Gajaga may have received backing from opposition groups to launch a media campaign against the government. Meanwhile, Sonko himself has lashed out at sections of the media, accusing them of undermining his work and calling for a boycott. He's also urged President Bassirou Diomaye Faye to honor campaign promises and address what he called laxity in matters of justice and protest-related violence.
Is with that report. In Togo, polls have officially closed for the military officials who cast their votes ahead of the municipal elections to be held on July 17. Military personnel voted early on Monday in line with electoral procedures that allow security forces to cast their ballots ahead of the general population. The campaign period began slowly but gained momentum in its final stretch, with candidates actively canvassing, including opposition parties that hardly initially threatened to boycott the election. The eventual participation brought renewed energy to the political landscape. Jean-Pierre Fabre is the president of opposition party ANC.
Anything that helps weaken the system in place, we support. So you want me to criticize that? Never. Anything that contributes to weakening it and exposing to the international community who they really are, I support it.
That was the Jean-Pierre Fabre, president of the opposition party ANC. Meanwhile, the government has banned all demonstrations planned for Monday earlier today and says that all necessary measures have been put in place to ensure that the municipal elections are held peacefully. Odabalo Awate is the Minister of Territorial Administration.
The Togolese government will ensure by all means that public order is maintained so that every Togolese citizen can go about their activities freely. The elections will indeed take place on June 17. All necessary measures have been taken and there will be no leniency for anyone who attempts to disturb public order.
Awate is the Minister of Territorial Administration of Togo. In Côte d'Ivoire, an open letter from Alohu Don Melo, Vice President of the party of former President Laurent Gbagbo, is calling for the authorization of precautionary candidacy within the PPACI. This comes just over a month before the deadline for the submission of candidacy. Although Laurent Gbagbo has been named the party's official candidate, he remains ineligible. Due to a judicial conviction, he continues to contest. Abdullah Hassan completes the story.
The open letter from Ahoua Don Melo, Vice President of the PPACI, is addressed to Laurent Gbagbo, who serves as both party president and designated presidential candidate. Given Gbagbo's current ineligibility, Don Melo is urging that 2 or 3 senior party officials be allowed to submit their candidacies to avoid the politics of an empty chair during the upcoming October presidential election. He describes the move as a precautionary strategy aimed at ensuring the party is not excluded from the vote should Gbagbo remain ineligible. Don Melo notes that these alternative candidacies will be withdrawn if a political solution is found that allows Gbagbo to contest. The PPACI Vice President also warns against a possible boycott, arguing that it will seriously weaken the party and undermine its political influence. The PPACI leadership says it is surprised by the release of the letter, stating that it had never been raised internally. The opposition party reaffirms that Laurent Gbagbo remains its sole candidate for the October election. However, the former Ivorian president is currently ineligible following a 2020 conviction by Ivorian courts which sentenced him to 20 years in prison for the robbery of the Central Bank of West African states, a decision he has consistently contested.
Abdullah Hassan with that report. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Malian forces strike back after deadly jihadist attacks. Senegal political commentator Badara Gajaga detained after alleged insults against Prime Minister Sonko. Flags fly at half-mast in Nigeria as the country mourns former President Muhammadu Buhari, and polls close after military early vote and tense campaign period in Togo. Still ahead in the news, we have guest interview and sport news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Meanwhile, the Liberian government has approved a 3-day protest organized by the civic advocacy group Solidarity of Trust for a new day stand scheduled to take place in Monrovia from July 15 to 17. The authorization was issued through the Ministry of Justice after a meeting with the stand's representatives and other stakeholders over the weekend. The group, alongside partners including We the People Movement, the Progressive Students Alliance, and the Youth League of the Congress of Democratic Change (CDC), intends to use the protest to voice concerns over governance and alleged injustices under President Bokai's administration. WADR's Abraham Parker reports from Monrovia.
During the meeting, Police Inspector General Gregory Coleman emphasized the importance of ensuring peace and order during the protest. The Solidarity of Trust for a New Day's leadership, led by Chairman Moluba Molu, pledged to cooperate with law enforcement agencies in adhere to the conditions set forth in their permit.
The protest organizers now call on all citizens across Liberia to intensify mobilization efforts to ensuring that tens of thousands of underprivileged, marginalized, downsized, peace-loving Liberians peacefully turn out in their numbers on July 17 to demand real and lasting change for the Republic.
Protesters are expected to march through key streets such as Tottenham Boulevard, Cinco, Ujro Island, and Central Time, concluding at Capitol Hill, where they plan to present a petition to the government. Meanwhile, a pro-government group, the Council of Patriots for Joseph Boakai and his vice president, announced plans to hold a separate gathering on July 17 at the Executive Mansion. According to Secretary General Chris Sanan, the event aims to honor what they described as President Boakai's leadership.
The Capitol Building will be no-go zone on the 17th. We will be using the Capitol Building and surrounding with a symbol. We will tell President Boakai, thank you. Will be that dancing collective of progress in the 1 year, 6 months.
As it stands, the government is yet to approve the pro-government group's planned action, but the Liberian Council of Churches is calling on stand and its partners to exercise continued restraint and demonstrate peacefully, emphasizing the importance of constructive dialogue in addressing the nation's concerns. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Well, Ghana's push for inclusive development is being held back the deep-seated challenges in housing, youth employment, gender equity, and climate response. That's according to the 2024 Ghana Social Development Outlook by the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, ISA, a semi-autonomous institute under the University of Ghana's College of Humanities. From Accra, Nadidi Tete reports.
The report points to a growing disconnect between policy and reality. In housing, 90% of all units are built by individuals with little state support. Yet, this self-built sector, key to local jobs and housing access, is largely ignored in national planning. ISE is calling for land reform, infrastructure investment, and tailored support for small-scale builders. Youth unemployment remains a critical concern. The report says young people are being trained for jobs that don't exist. Initiatives like NAPCO and Youth in Agriculture are falling short due to weak job matching and lack of decent working conditions. ISE recommends aligning training with market needs and involving youth in program design. Gender inequality in agriculture is another major gap. Women provide 60% of the labor but own just 30% of land and struggle with credit and market access. The report urges equal access to resources, better roads, and inclusion of women in decision making. On climate change, while public awareness is low, anxiety is rising, especially among educated groups. ISE sees this as an opportunity, recommending more climate education and support to help turn concern into action. Governance-wise, public support for democracy remains strong, but frustration is mounting over poor service delivery and economic pressures. The report warns of growing openness to authoritarian alternatives unless governance becomes more responsive. For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is a guest.
In our guest interview this evening, we stay in Nigeria for more insight on the demise of former leader Muhammadu Buhari. At this guest interview, Usman Omar engaged Haruna Abdullahi, an author of a book titled The Buhari in Us, for his takes on the late leader's personality, leadership and legacy.
It's indeed a grave loss for us as Nigerians.
You are an author of a very much celebrated book, The Buhari in Us. But first of all, kindly from your own bird's eye view, give us a summary of who the man Muhammadu Buhari, the former president, from your own perspective.
Late Muhammadu Buhari was an angelic human being molded in human aspirations. He were the gaps that separate the normal human beings from the extraordinary ones. He belongs to a cycle that you can call a mystery. He embodies an iconic representation of an ideal perfect man, whom you can actually describe as impeccable, faultless, and stainless. People like him come once in a generation. He's been the pathfinder, an icon figure, the bridge between yesterday and today, a Democrat. In fact, not just a Democrat, a dignified Democrat, given that he was coming from a military background with the expectation that he was going to be a ruthless Democrat. But contrary to people's expectation, he became a civilized Democrat. They actually set the ideals that redefine what real democracy is. Right. Describing this man is like describing a mystery, an enigmatic mystery, if you permit that word.
All right, let's delve into his leadership, stewardship, 1st January 1984 to August 1985. He was Nigeria's head of state. And then, upon our return to democracy, he ventured into the political arena, having contested about 3 times without success. But for the 4th time, he was able to lead Nigeria from 2015, May 29, 2015 to May 29, 2023. I want you to give us an idea of who you see the man as.
For Muhammadu Buhari kind of leadership, he will aptly be described as a solutionist leader who always comes when things are actually in disarray. When we are at the verge of collapse, that's when you see him. In 1984, he came when the country was run on a precipice, a near collapse, and from nowhere he came and actually salvaged the situation and redirected the ethos of a country called Nigeria. With the return of democracy in around 1999, he ventured into active political participation. And the people yearned for his kind of leadership because they knew he was coming to halt, the decade, the rot that has characterized leadership or governance in Nigeria. So repeatedly, just like you have said, he tried to win elections. He was actually denied because evidence abound that he did win his elections, but he was rigged out. Eventually in 2015, reason prevailed, and the objects of rigging could not actually hold again. So the people finally elected the leader they wanted. At the time he came, the country was also at the point of breakdown. Insecurity has dominated every sphere of the country. Terrorists were having, field day until this man came and actually pushed the Boko Haram terrorists to the fringes. And for the time he spent as president, as democratically elected president, he provided solutions to governance. At the height of the COVID-19, when other nations were brought to their knees, this man held Nigeria to a surviving instinct because of the reforms he had put in place. Perhaps the first leader to have been visited with series of recessions. In all of this, he provided solutions. President Muhammadu Buhari left behind a legacy deeply rooted in integrity. You can call it patriotism and principled governance. His leadership, spanning decades of public service, both in military and democratic roles, actually gave several enduring hallmarks. Chiefly amongst them, you have integrity and anti-corruption. Perhaps the most defining legacy of Muhammadu Buhari was his uncompromising stance against corruption, both as a military head of state and as a 2-time elected civilian president, he championed what I call transparency, physical discipline, and institutional efforts to combat graft, mostly notable through his support of agencies like the EFCC and the ICPC.
Well, Haruna Abdullahi is the author of a book titled The Buhari in Us, talking about the late President Muhammadu Buhari. Well, it's time for sports, and with me in the studio is Augustine Coley. Augustine, it looks like the demise of Muhammadu Buhari is dominating all fronts, even in sports.
Yeah, certainly. That's a statesman, a recognized statesman who has, left the universe. But in what you're saying, the president of the Confederation of African Football, Dr. Patrice Motsepe, has expressed a deep sorrow for the death of former Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari. In a statement, Dr. Motsepe extended condolences on behalf of CAF and its 54 member associations to Buhari's family, the Nigerian government, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and the Nigeria Football Federation. He praised Buhari's passing for football, recalling their meeting and describing him as a committed supporter of the sport in Nigeria. But just to bring a light on the WAFCON, Botswana and struck a dramatic injury time winner to edge Tunisia 2-1 in Casablanca on Sunday, but have to wait to discover if they have progressed to the quarterfinals of the Total Energies CAF Women's Africa Cup of Nations. Despite the late heroics from Kayundwi, Ulamets, and the Marits' hopes of a top 2 finish were dashed as Nigeria and Algeria played out a goalless draw in the group's other game, ensuring both advanced. Coming up tonight, it will be do or die for Ghana and Tanzania by 8 p.m. this evening at the Bekan Stadium at the Oriental province of Morocco. One more chance to earn a place in the quarterfinals of the Total WAFCON 2024 for Tunisia and Ghana, who have only amassed a point after 2 Group C matches so far.
Yeah, because that game, before you come to your next story, Ghana's Black Queens, it's a do or die, like you stated there, because they must win, nothing else. And even a victory does not guarantee them a place in the next round. But all they need to do is they need to win and they need to score a lot of goals. Perhaps with a glimmer of chances that they could make it to the next round. But without victory, it's all over for the Black Queens.
They need victory and, like you say, a lot of goals in case of head-to-head.
Because winning still does not guarantee them a place in the next round. But you have a final story for us?
Yes, my final story, of course, away from WAFCON, Chelsea delivered a shocking 3-0 win over Paris Saint-Germain in the FIFA Club World Cup final on Sunday in East Rutherford, New Jersey. And it was the Blue Star Cole Palmer who led the way to the second Club World Cup title in the English Premier League side's historic venture, the first since 2021. And Palmer netted an early brace with 2 almost identical goals just 8 minutes apart midway through the first half.
And that was it, because when I watched the post-match interview of Chelsea's coach, Maresca, he said they were done with this game after 10 minutes. And he was right. You watched the game. You call it shocking. You're confused. So many people didn't see these results coming, but Chelsea fans will tell you, oh boy, we saw this coming.
Indeed, it was a surprise by many, but Chelsea stuck to their plans.
And they stuck to their plan, and it was good. Well, okay. Thank you very much, Augustine Coley, for the sports. Well, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and special thanks to Falilou So and Umu Danyogo for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram at WDR News, and on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. I am Sankule Janko. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County. Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia. Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about